All right, ladies and gentlemen, hockey fans, welcome back to the podcast. Obviously, a little bit of a different look tonight. I'm Treh Hamilton, joined alongside Mr. Brad Thompson. We're coming to you guys with a very important episode. A very important episode in that this is going to be the final episode of the Ontario Super Hockey League podcast. And a lot has come up in the past few months, and a lot of things have changed in terms of our personal lives and our involvement with this situation and this league as a whole. And we're going to take this opportunity with our platform to bring everybody kind of up to speed with everything that's been going on and kind of explain our reasoning, our rationale, and give you guys a complete synopsis of the entire situation. So first and foremost, once again, I'm Treh Hamilton. This is Brad Thompson. We want to thank so much all of our co-hosts on the podcast this year. Starting off, obviously, not in any particular order, but I work with Mr. Brian Hawley. So thanks a lot, Brian, for everything you did this year on the show, bringing that great insight and always telling the jokes about what your old pappy told you. And Joel Campbell, one of the best play-by-play guys around, and bringing great insight down in that Elvinston area, and also working with the Squires and being able, to help us get up to speed with everything down there in that great community and their involvement with hockey. Also, huge shout out to Patty O, representing Dunnville and the folks down there. He's done a great job. And again, thank you so much for being on the air with us, Mr. Bill Newman, the Central Division representative. You once again brought a great perspective to this show, and we want to thank you personally, Bill. You helped us kind of from a different perspective, right? Some of us are fans, some of us are analysts, and you have that background as an official. So you were able to kind of settle things down. And also wanted to shout out and thank Mr. Brad Burton, Bertsy, the overtime hero, the overtime king. We love you, Bertsy. Again, a different perspective. You brought us the perspective of a player, a guy who's played at this level. You helped us open our eyes to things that were behind the scenes, and that's why we're excited to get into this episode. And also our special guest in the last couple weeks of the show, Mr. Andrew Rogers. Thanks again for being a part of our playoff run, Raji. You did a great job as well, filling in commentary in Elora and in Elvinston when Joel was away. And again, you did a great job of bringing insight to this show. And we couldn't have done what we did this year without you guys. And you guys, first and foremost, obviously, it's going to be a bit of a surprise to everybody. I don't think anybody was expecting this, but again, we had to come out and we had to say what we had to say. We had to get a lot of this off our chests and use the platform that we've been provided to be able to let the fans and the people at home know, really, like I said, what's been going on for a long time. So, Mr.
Great.
Brad Thompson.
If I could step it, just I know you thanked everyone there, and I just when I first got my hands on this podcast and started to assemble a crew because we wanted to do a panel style podcast, I don't think I could have asked for a better group of guys. I enjoyed every Monday, sometimes Tuesdays, sometimes Wednesdays that we got together and we were able to talk hockey. Just a great group of hockey minds and just in general, a great group of guys, great human beings. I enjoyed every minute of it. We're going to talk about some of the other stuff, but just talking hockey with you guys in our group chats and on our Monday nights, I really want to say thank you to everyone. And I want to say thank you to our fans, everyone who commented, everyone who listened. It's bittersweet, this being the last episode. And I never imagined it could have become what it became. And I truly, from the bottom of my heart, I want to say thank you to everyone.
I couldn't agree more, Brad. And that's where I was going to turn it over to right there at the end. There was the fans, and thank you for jumping in and making sure I didn't forget, because we know based on the episode titles that I normally forget a few things every now and again. But thank you again to the fans. I mean, you guys help push this thing, and you guys are the reason why we're bringing this to you on this platform, because we know that there are people who are engaged. There are people that really are passionate and that care. And as crazy as it sounds, you guys cared what we had to say. And some of you guys, would chirp us in the comments about some of our picks and things like that. And
Brad doesn't know hockey.
Yeah, exactly. I love it. We're leaving it all on the line tonight, but we couldn't have done it without you guys, the fans, right? And as we kind of shift the focus, we get into this episode. We wanted to kind of give everybody a background to who we are. We've done uh, basics introductions when we first started the show, and people who have met us in person have obviously got some of our story. But we wanted to let you guys at home know who we are and what got us involved with the Ontario Super Hockey League. Brad, why don't you go ahead and take the floor here and let everybody at home know what got you involved and what led you to here, which is the final episode of this year's podcast.
It's funny, I'm looking at my screen right now, and it's actually that sign right above my shoulder there that got me involved with everything. It was um, former owner, the Aaron Blitz. They did a lawn sign campaign, and I was walking through the neighborhood with my family, and in the middle of nowhere, I'm in a suburb of Aaron. I'm not even in Aaron. I'm just outside of Aaron, and I saw a sign. I went on the website, and it's I saw senior hockey look to get involved, and I filled out a form. I had always been interested. I'd always wanted to work in some form of media hockey. When I went to university, that didn't really seem like an option for me, so I never explored it as an avenue. But I really wanted to kind of take a pivot and kind of have a second career in sports, because I mean I grew up playing AAA hockey and still had a love for the game. So I sent a message and I became the social media manager for the Aaron Blitz. That was, I guess, 3 years ago now. And so I kind of started to work my way up within the Blitz organization. We shifted and moved to Orangeville. I continued to move my way up and I became director of player personnel. I still did social media. I still oversaw all the media and all the basically anything the players needed. I took care of sponsorships, all that type of stuff. And once the team was sold, I there was a bit of a transition period. I had a bit of a falling out with the new owner and the new team. No fault of anyone. It was just when teams change owners, they bring in their own people, and they just didn't need me anymore for obvious reasons. They had a really good staff come in. And then, but I was lucky enough to parlay that into working social media for the league, the West, and it was. I never, when I first started this, I thought I was just going to work for my hometown team, and it just I got to work for the whole league, and I got to grow, and I got to meet a bunch of amazing people, including yourself, Trey. And when we hooked up there and we started working together, you asked me to do color. You had started working in Orangeville, and I got back involved with the Blitz organization, and it's reinvigorated me in a way, and I love the on-air chemistry that we've developed in our broadcasting, and I'm excited for what's to come. So that's kind of my little spiel. It's been a process from Aaron to Orangeville to not Orangeville to working for the league and social media and marketing and all that type of stuff. Bro, I never thought I would be a broadcaster, but hopping on a call with you, it's exhilarating. So, and then I mean, in terms of this podcast, like I said before, when I first got my hands on this thing, I mean, I tend to be a man of few words, not right now, but it has really pushed me outside my comfort zone, and I've loved every second of it.
For sure. And we're so happy to have you on board, Brad. And you're the one that brought me into this position here where I am now. But for me, my history with the league, how I got started, uh, just checked out a hockey game on a random Saturday night a couple years back, and I liked what I saw in terms of the on ice product, and there's some talented guys out there in the ice, and I committed myself to follow the team in Tilsonburg, as that was my hometown. That's where I was from, and that led to they went on a championship run. They lost to the Stratford Fighting Irish, ironically. I got swept, and I kind of ascended my fandom to the next level. They opened up a position as their former play-by-play announcer was moving west, and they had heard that I went to school and was pretty talented at what I did, so they offered me a position. I took it. I ran with it. I had a great season. It was a lot of fun. Tilsonburg went on to win the championship over Alvinston last year. Got to be part of that, and again, had a lot of fun with that whole situation. The team, the guys on the ice know I love and support every one of those guys. I wouldn't change a thing. I mean, we had a great time. This year, unfortunately, some things came up. There was major disagreements between the owner of the Tillsonburg Thunder and myself. It was getting to the point where I felt that I was being disrespected, and I know there's two sides to every story, and there's actually a third, and that's usually the truth. But at the end of the day, like I said, my family and the situation I was in terms of my talent, and of course at home, wife, baby, new house, a lot of things were going on. So the way that I was treated at the end of my tenure in Tillsonburg was very unfortunate for them, I will say. I think that they really fumbled the bag in this situation, and I'm proud to say that in that situation. I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I'm trying to say that they had a very passionate individual who is very talented, who was willing to do above and beyond. I mean, many of you guys who are here that are from Tillsonburg watched my individual podcast that I hosted last year called the Thunder Hour Podcast. Just me and my dad, or me and my buddy Leaf, goofing around, having a good time talking about the Tillsonburg Thunder. And that podcast got Brad's attention to go and ask me to come here this year. I did all of that and brought my dad to become a huge passionate fan of the team. He'd sit in the corner and bang the drum, and hearing from the players in Tillsonburg, the rally drum, the chants, all that stuff that you see in Alvinston and other places now in this league started with us in Tillsonburg, down in that corner section. The passion, the sold out barns, all that stuff. I don't care. It started with us by making people realize that this league has talent, and why not cheer instead of sitting on your butt or coming and just standing in the bar and laughing with your buddies. Why not actually treat it as the hockey that it is, which was good hockey. And all that I did in Tillsonburg, it obviously came to a close this year. I called a couple games for them. It ended. And then an opportunity opened with Mr. Dylan Denemy down in Tilbury. He asked me to come down and call a game. Thanks, Dylan. This year's MVP. I was honored. I went down. I called the game. And the owner of the Orangeville Blitz listened to that call. He was curious. He said, "This kid's got some talent. Is he willing to come up and work for me up in Orangeville?" And that's what led to me getting up in all this Blitz attire today, and really what we're going to talk about today. A lot of it started that night. So that brought me to Orangeville, where, of course, I knew Brad from the podcast, but then working with the team that he was affiliated with, it kind of brought everything together. Again, Brad reached out to me early September this year, asked if I'd be willing to join the team. It took a few weeks to get everything set up, get everybody on board, and I agreed to become the host of this podcast. And then, of course, my affiliation with the owner of the Blitz carried me to the Stratford Fighting Irish. And I took over the play-by-play duties there late in the season and have not looked back. And that's kind of the journey that led me to this point where I am today. And I'd say we broke it down pretty good, Brad. But now we got to switch the focus from here. And I wanted to ask you, one of the things that has kind of been under our skin for a while here is the conversation that was brought to us when we first started here in this position. And that is that this league was sold to us as a, quote, social media league. This league was supposed to be, every team was supposed to look like what you see with 48 Cuts down in Alvinston and what you see with the teams like Stratford and Orangeville, with the amazing videography and the constant engagement with social media. That's what this whole league was supposed to be about. And for us, it was supposed to be as you talked about in your synopsis, a roundtable open discussion that was supposed to be us, hockey experts, talking all things about this league, all things. And unfortunately for us, it was not that situation. And that is a major reason why we're bringing you guys this episode. So censorship, that's the first issue we're going to talk about tonight. We felt this year that our freedom of voice, our freedom of speech, our ability to express our opinions around a league that labeled itself as semi-professional, we felt that we got a slap in the face this year. And a big reason it all started really when you go back to the original owner of the Stratford Fighting Irish. There was a situation that occurred between him and an individual in Elora this year. We wanted to talk about this situation, and we received emails and text messages from the director of the league and others stating that we were not allowed to talk about the situation. We were given reasoning, and the reasoning was fair. But even after the situation settled, the dust settled, we were still told not to talk about it. We were told what to say. And that was kind of the beginning for me, Brad. I don't know about you, but that was the beginning of where I started to get really frustrated. And we're talking November at this point, and here we are. We're nearly into May at this point. So
First off, do I need to give you a fine because your phone went off there? I know it's
yeah,
just me and you, but I might still be doling out fines here.
go ahead. I'll take
All
it.
right, gotta change that graphic. Yeah, that was kind of where everything started, and I think the issue with that was we were kind of told what to talk about when we talked about it, and then we kind of got a lot of backlash from a lot of other people, right? And that's kind of been a common theme is no matter what we talk about, someone is either offended or is not happy about what we've said. But we're a podcast of seven guys talking and giving our opinions based on how we see it. And that, like you said, that was kind of the first one that we yeah, we kind of downplayed the whole situation. We could have got into it in a lot more detail, but regardless, it just there was how do I say this? There was if we had just stated the facts, we would have just stated the facts. People still would have been mad, but we would have at least stated the facts. We kind of hopped around the truth, and we didn't really get into the meat and potatoes of it, and it still made people mad. But that's where, like you said, it all kind of started.
It's the truth, and that's what was the beginning for me and you especially. It felt like this idea of this league becoming semi-pro. I was all for it when it was first announced, but when we got asked to do this podcast, it was under the idea that this league had a vision. The vision to us was this social media driven league with, like we said, a semi-professional tag, etc. And as soon as things started to get censored as heavily as they did, the two of us really started to get frustrated. And it goes beyond the two of us, trust me, but I'm not going to get into that. And I'm not going to speak for other people. I'm just speaking for myself, and Brad can speak for himself as well. The censorship was a huge factor, and being told what we can and can't say, getting text messages and emails prior to recording dates saying this is what you are allowed to talk about and this is what you're not allowed to talk about. When it comes down to hockey, criticism of individuals or officials was also a big thing we got censored on. We got censored heavily on the Elora Delhi situation. And I mean, that was our best episode. The episodes in which we talked about these controversial situations with our own opinions, they exploded. We had our highest view counts. We had our highest engagement on Spotify. And
it's not even that. It's the social media aspect. Like you said, we were sold on a social media driven league. And these games where events happened or these situations where we talk about, like you said, our most listened to episode was where we talked about a trade and we gave our opinions. And there's the game, the Elora Stratford game, the social media, that's where the comment sections blew up, not just on our post, but on the league post as well. But then, we were asked to either take them down or turn off commenting, things like that. And it's like, I understand. I'm fine with taking a comment down if it's blatantly racist or if it's just flat out ridiculous. But there needs to be a discourse on social media. People want to talk about these things, good or bad. People want to discuss. People want to be keyboard warriors, which is, you know what? It only grows your brand. It only grows your business. But it just for the social media league, it just seems like and I'm not singling out one person because it kind of came across the board. Anytime something negative was said, there would be backlash, and it just no one really leaned into that vision.
Not at all. And then we felt kind of left alone in that situation, right? We'd have
Well,
our
we're
conversations.
we're the voices.
Yeah.
We're the ones who are talking about it, and we're the ones who are giving our perspective. We're giving the fans perspective too. If we're talking about it, other people are talking about it at home.
Yeah. Well, and go across any semi-professional organization that's an athletic organization in the world, and I mean, go watch a podcast regarding any of these other semi-professional leagues. As soon as they took away the senior brand and they added the semi-pro brand, which we've faced criticism about all year, I still have to try to argue with people online. And at the end of the day, and now that this has come forward, this episode as it's released, people are going to understand a little bit more. As soon as they called it that, as soon as they coined it that, in terms of OSHL executives and beyond, they created a situation where it was okay. This is the expectation, and then here we are in in April of this year, and this is the reality, right? And for us, it's like, okay, you guys want to do this podcast? Here's the breakdown. We're gonna do it like this. You guys have the floor. It's all yours. They wanted to get away from what the podcast was the year prior, which was a lot of interviews and don't get me wrong, Raji did a great job last year, but they wanted to get away from that to focus on a roundtable open discussion podcast. So when we got brought in to start this thing, and then within weeks of the season starting, we're getting censored, you got to understand our frustrations from that point. That there are things we could have talked about this entire season that would have helped with fan engagement. And yes, you're going to have people that are saying, well, if you talked about controversial issues, it would have made the league look bad. Well, guess what? We're going to get into detail that's already taken care of. At the end of the day, we didn't want our voices to be censored in the hockey world of this league. We didn't want to talk about the politics. We didn't want to talk about any of that stuff. We wanted to just talk about hockey. And sometimes when you talk about hockey, there's controversy. That's hockey. And we felt that we were censored heavily this year, and that's a big reason why you guys are listening or watching what we have to say tonight. And like I said, the Allura Delhi situation, all these things, the officiating situation, the Laura Stratford situation. Those are just the first few things that we're willing to talk about tonight. There are many other things that we're not going to talk about tonight in regards of our censorship. We got a lot to get through, and we don't have all of eternity to get through it. So that's kind of breaking down that. We're going to just quickly take a 2-second break, and then we're going to come right back and stay with us, folks, because it's about to get spicy. All right, folks, welcome back to the Send-Off Show, the final episode of the OSHL Podcast. I'm Treh Hamilton. That's Brad Thompson. Thanks so much for being here with us. Thanks for being along for the ride. Thank you for bearing with us through our initial opening there and talking about censorship. And now that the censorship has been lifted, as this is our final episode and something that we've been planning to do here, we're going to talk and we're going to get into detail about a few things that are very important for people at home. People that are watching, people that are concerned, people that have questions. Hopefully, we can take this next little bit here to answer your questions. And we're going to open it up, and we're going to talk about an elephant in the room that's been there this entire year. It's been a sticky situation. It's had a lot more downs than it's had ups, and that's the Central Division here in the OSHL. And the Central Division was a blindside for a lot of us. It was brought to our attention very late. We'll get into more of the drop the W stuff later on. But for now, we're going to talk about the Central and what the idea was, how it all got started. And despite best efforts from several people that were in power in this league, trying to say it's too fast, it's being rushed, stop this. This is not what you want to do this year, coming off that huge year that the league had last year. And despite, like I said, the best efforts of some people trying to say, wait, let's just wait and see, let's feel it out. The director of this league forced the COSHL into existence and pulled a couple of teams into it that should not have been in that situation. The timeline was extremely rushed, and it just created a lot of controversy in this league. We still get comments on all of the social medias about this league and the situation that it brought forward. And I guess we'll open it up with August of last year, when a lot of us had initially found out about the Central Division. So there was an announcement for a few teams joining the WASHL, the West Division. Richmond Hill being one of them. I believe Bowmanville was another team on that list. Brad, you would know more, as you actually announced the teams that were joining.
You were talking about the Central. It was Bowmanville. It was Bowmanville, Trent Hills. Oh man, should have had it on my notes. But there
Put you
was
on the
basically
spot.
we announced four teams, and there was going to be four more. It was Bowmanville, Trent Hills. Madoc wasn't involved at the time. There was one other team that didn't end up existing. Um, Give me a second if you want to keep
It's
talking, and I
okay.
can tell you.
Yep. Because Richmond Hill as well initially was part of the Western Division expansion. So it was going to be a brand new look this year. Initially, that was the understanding, but to have a new division was kind of, like I said,
Norwood. That
it
was
was
the other team.
Norwood. Yeah,
So it was Bowmanville, Madoc, Norwood, and Trent Hills were the
yeah.
four teams that we had announced.
So that was the Central to begin with, and then obviously we go fast forward a couple months. We get to August, September, when things start ramping up. Like, hey, the season's about to start. We have Trent Hills, Madoc, the county. We have Uxbridge and Orangeville and Richmond
Formerly
Hill.
Stouffville.
Yep, formerly Stouffville. Now all involved in this situation. And okay, well, now that arises questions from people. What's this going to mean for this league? Are these teams crossing over? And right from day one, we had the understanding that there was going to be a crossover championship, et cetera, between the West and the Central champions. And then the hockey started. And the timeline was so short for a couple of these teams. And if you are watching and listening and you're from the area of any of these teams that we're talking about right now, please understand that we're not talking bad on your team whatsoever, because you guys did the best with what you had in terms of timing, in terms of timelines, in terms of, I don't know, there's an entire other league in your area that has already taken a majority of the very talented players in that area. So it's very difficult to build a team in a semi-professional league with the time frame that you had and with the handcuff situation of the positioning of your teams. The Orangeville Blitz were a completely different situation. They decided to join the Central upon request. Again, it was this vision, right, that we were talking about with the censorship thing, this vision. The vision was not followed through, that's for sure. The Blitz possess players who have played in the National Hockey League, in the American Hockey League, in the East Coast Hockey League, several major junior, ex-college guys, university, D1 in the States, D1 in Canada. And basically, this team's not a joke, right? Richmond Hill, same thing. I mean, they possess a bunch of guys who lit up the score sheet in the SP and the FPHL. You got guys that played in the OHL. Not obviously to the level of Orangeville in terms of the overall skill, given that Orangeville had the time to develop that. And for those two, and for the Uxbridge Pioneers, it was a major wake-up call when the game started, and they started going on the road and facing teams that they were beating by 15, 16 goal spreads. That's when the comments started flooding in. That's when the questions started to arise from us, but once again, we weren't allowed to talk about it. The Uxbridge Pioneers were the first team to jump ship. We're going to get into a little bit more detail in the next portion onto their overall reasoning behind it. Obviously, their owner was put in a real bad situation, basically saying, "Why would I bring my guys on the road? You know, get threatened, get harassed in the middle of a game when we're going to win 18-0? What does this mean, right? How is this semi-professional hockey?" And you got to understand that the guy has a great point. You flip the script over, like I said. The Orangeville Blitz. We'll get really into detail on the Blitz after this, but you got to think about what they went through this year. And there's a lot of people trying to sell the Blitz on being this bad guy. You know, they're the Joker to the Washoe's Batman and all this kind of stuff. And that's not the truth whatsoever. The Blitz had the most talented team, arguably, in this entire league. And that's coming from a guy that gets to call those guys right there in the Fighting Irish, got to watch the Elvis the Killer Bees, is seeing this series with the Strathroy Jets, was involved with Tillsonburg. The Orangeville Blitz had arguably the most talented roster in this entire league. And they had to play against teams that they were beating handily. And once again, the censorship comes back in. There's people from the league. We got directors and commissioners asking questions of, why are you guys beating teams by 18 goals? You should really take your foot off the gas. And these kind of things were major issues that we weren't allowed to talk about all year. And now we finally get to bring it to light. And for Trent Hills, they get into the postseason. A huge controversy comes up. They're playing the Madoc Wildcats in round one of their best of three, which, by the way, was never supposed to be a best of three. Once again, showing the league understands that they really messed that whole division and situation up when three of the teams backed out. The Trent Hill Stallions drive to Madoc. The Wildcats are set up. There's 500 people in the barn. It's rocking. They're ready to go. And guess what? The refs don't show up. And the players who committed their time away from their families to be part of something big, to be part of something special. Yeah, game one, we understand. It was a blowout. That's what we're talking about right now. That second game, when the officials didn't show up, created so much controversy. And again, we were not allowed to talk about it. We were silenced. And again, what part of this being an open roundtable discussion in a situation like that comes up where officials don't show up, they have to cancel a playoff game, not the first game of the season or anything like that. It was a huge, once again, red flag to us, and really, again, part of a driving factor as to why we're making this episode tonight. And Brad, what are your thoughts on the Central Division, and how did you feel, if it was rushed or not? Like, what's your opinion on that, man?
I want to start by saying, obviously you had kind of mentioned it. We love everyone in the Central. We just, especially, I mean, owners, players, everyone. We have such great relationships. We had, I mean, one of our best interviews was obviously with the goalie for the Madoc Wildcats. We were obviously invited to do a live show up in the Warnock Arena there. Great relationships with everyone, great people, great, just everything about that league is everyone, great people, amazing. But you hit the nail on the head that everything felt rushed. And when you look what was going on in the West and the way the talent was developing and the way the social media presences were developing with the content creators and with, you know, the fans in the stands, and it just it felt rushed, and it just all those teams were put it at a disadvantage.
100%. It was more even than a disadvantage, because they basically got asked to join this thing under this vision, and then had to become really the whipping boy for these teams like Orangeville and Richmond Hill and Uxbridge. And
And
it was
I understand there needed to be growth too. We've been involved with the West for a long time now, and but it just they didn't have time to have that growth. They shouldn't have been involved with these teams. It should have been maybe a separate entity. I know we've kind of talked about that in private conversations. They were kind of set up for failure, it felt like.
I agree fully. It was right from the start, felt like it was going to fail. And you look at the way that people talk about it. And again, if you're an owner up there, if you're in the county, Madoc, Trent Hills, any one of those centers, right? We're not sitting here bashing you guys. This is not on you. This is a league issue.
And
This league,
we're trying to kind of, I know it may not sound like, we're trying to have your back here, because there were a
yeah.
lot of negative things said that obviously, you know, coming to Orangeville and getting pumped 17-1 is not fun. And we didn't want to see that. We wanted to see you guys, you know, advance and prosper and grow your brand, grow your product. We were on board to help you guys do that. And like I said, we loved everyone we met, and it just, but we that it wasn't going to happen the way it was set up when you put Orangeville and Richmond Hill and Uxbridge in the same division.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't even close. And The reason we're frustrated with that was because, like we said, Orangeville is a 20-minute drive from Elora. And so, you can't say, well, it's logistically speaking, Orangeville makes more sense in that division, blah, blah, blah. No, no, no. The Just as bad as the Trent Hills and the Madocs and the county got screwed in this situation, so did the Blitz. Because you think they wanted to go and beat these teams this badly? Absolutely not. That's not on the agenda. They want to play hockey. And when the Blitz were told it was a semi-pro league, guess what they did? They invested and made it a semi-pro team. They went in, brought in the proper players. They went in, brought in all the equipment. They went in, they got the best play-by-play and color commentator in the league, whatever. They went out and they did what had to be done to prove that they bought into a semi-pro league. And then they're going out on home ice in front of fans that are checking out their first Blitz game, and they're winning 18-0. And people in the crowd are saying, "What is this? This isn't even senior hockey. This is beer league at this point." And I just said the evil B word right there. That's Brad knows all about. But at the end of the day, it wasn't. We're not trashing on the talent of the county and Trent Hills and Madoc. You guys put what you could on the ice, and you guys are a great group of friends and people that have been together for years. But to get tossed into a situation, because the Central Division is still branded as semi-professional, and it's not semi-professional. We, once again, had to silence this. We weren't allowed to talk about any of these issues. You look at the situation, for example, with the county and the playoffs. A huge situation. It was brought to everybody's attention in early February that the Royals were potentially being handed a bunch of points. And this was based on forfeited games and games scheduled against Uxbridge. And in any world, in any hockey league outside of this one, that situation would have been dealt with properly. It would have been dealt with, okay, I'm sorry, a few of these teams have folded. This is the situation, but we're not just going to hand you points. And the county got handed points, and this is not slagging on them. We understand. Like I said, this is on the league. This is not on the county. But when you go out and you hand a team who had won 2 games all year a bunch of free points that got them into the playoffs, which, of course, when Orangeville and that situation happened, it made it null and void anyway. But why do you think they folded is my whole point. This situation pissed a lot of people off. It was brought to the attention of the league. It was actually protested by Orangeville that this isn't how you run this. And they told them, it doesn't matter. This is how we're going to do it. And that made everything look bad. We started getting messages. We started getting asked, why is this happening? Why did this team that has won 2 games, why are they getting gifted this situation? At the end of the day, that part of the question, I'll never be able to answer because I'm not in the thinking caps of the OSHL directors or the commissioner or anything like that. That's not my place. But I could see the situation as for what it is. And I know that kind of stuff ruined the way that people look at this league, as a majority of what happened in the Central this year did as a whole. And the West had its own issues. We know, we already talked about a lot of that with the Elora and Stratford situation and all of that. But the Central was really a telling point for both of us that where is this going, right? For both of us, it was sit back and reflect and see, you know what, when you realize that how A, it was rushed, B, the execution was poor, C, the community's bought in, the teams bought in, the people wanted to see what we wanted to see. But D, the final part of that is, why was it not a separate entity? Why were the teams not evaluated properly prior to all this happening? Orangeville and Richmond Hill and Uxbridge should have been in the Western Division. They should have been competing with these other teams. I don't believe any of these shenanigans would have happened, and I believe that Madoc and Trent Hills and the county should have been in their own separate entity, playing amongst each other, attracting talent locally, and building towards what was the goal of eventually maybe joining the Western Division and making this big new league. But to force it, to rush it, to shove it in our faces, and to have to make us silence the people at home that are saying, wow, was it a football game tonight when they're looking at the OSHL scores and it's 17-0 for Orangeville and Uxbridge is winning 13-3 over Trent Hills? Like, those kind of things really made me question what are we doing here? And that's a big reason why we had to step in and do what we had to do with this, because obviously with both of us working with Orangeville, we've been the center of a lot of controversy because Orangeville is the center of a lot of that. And for us, at the end of the day, we got to see and hear what was really going on, and we're sorry to the people at home that you didn't get to see the true details. And that's why we're trying to bring you guys what we can out of this situation, and understand that, you know what, we have your back. If you're at home and you've been on this side of things and saying that it was rushed and that they should have been their own entity and that maybe this shouldn't have even happened at all, we understand, we hear you, and we're on that side of the fence as well. Trust me. And this is no slag. Again, I hope that the people in Trent Hills and Madoc and County realize that, like I said, we're not here talking bad about your teams, the people that are on the ice, the fans in the stands. What we're here about is the league. They rushed the situation, they messed it up poorly, and they kept trying to force it all the way down to a best of 3 first round and a best of 5 championship when 3 of the teams are gone. That was where we drew the line. And honestly, like I said, it was, as we would have quoted on a previous show, it was as semi-pro as you could see. That's what really put the semi in the semi-pro, was the whole situation with the Central this year.
Trey, I just piggybacking off your one point there a little bit earlier, I do want to apologize to the fans of this podcast because I believe there were a few shows where it was mentioned, why wasn't this a separate entity? And I kind of cut whoever said that off. And it's just because that's what I had to do. And like I said, we wanted to bring the fans all the information. But sometimes I had to cut things like that off because, sometimes you get 7 guys talking and things like that come up and we want to talk about it, and it had to be cut off, and that's just the way it had to be. And so I apologize to the fans of this podcast, and that's why we're doing this episode right now, for full transparency.
Yeah, no more censorship, right? And that's what this all comes down to. And we looked at a big part of what we believe in and what we've been part of with this league is hanging up right behind both of us, and hearing and having conversations with Orangeville's ownership, their fans, their players, explaining to you guys what happened with the playoff dropout is part of what we want to talk about tonight. And what I just touched on with the situation with the county getting the 10 or 11 extra points, Orangeville obviously was fed up with that situation. And if you look at the way that the standings had initially played out prior to Orangeville's decision to not participate in the playoffs, they did not fold. They decided to not participate in the playoffs. If you look at that situation, it was lining up that Orangeville and Richmond Hill would have had to play each other in the first round. And the way that we feel about it, the way that Orangeville feels about it, was that the high-ups in this league, the director of this league, wanted to see a Trent Hills or Madoc, obviously it would have been Madoc looking back at it now, in the final against Orangeville. They wanted that to happen. And when you look at it and break it down, it really makes you question what the motives were. Why would Orangeville want to be in a playoff where they would have had to play their top competition, who, congratulations to Marchie and the guys, the division champions. Why would they want to play them in the first round of that playoff? It would have been the top 2 teams, and then have to play teams that they had already beaten up on ridiculously, go on the road, risk players getting injured. These guys have jobs. They have wives and kids, as all of us do. What would be the rationale behind that? And nobody could explain that, right? And that situation really kick-started what we're into tonight and what the entire league as a whole, this all building up and basically coming to a head here. That really was the eye-opener for a lot of people. We obviously talked about how our eyes were already opened way back in November when we first got censored and silenced on some of the things we wanted to talk about. Despite the numbers of our podcast and our social media engagement and our clicks and things like that being skyrocketed from these episodes, that's when our questioning started. But this situation was really when a lot of people started to question. A lot of people started digging and asking, why is there even a team that can dress 10 points every night in that division? Speaking of Orangeville. And then when they decided not to participate, again, it was, they summed it up: player safety, the fights, the brawls in the stands, all those things contributed to that. But ultimately, again, the way that they felt that the league wanted the direction of a Madoc or Trent Hills to be in the championship against them of that division, it just did not sit well with anybody in that situation. The players didn't want to go and beat up on these teams. They were done with it. Just like we've been over this last little while here, they were done with it. They didn't want to deal with it anymore. And I really, at the end of the day, can't blame them. So if you're wondering why, that is the official reasoning, obviously, behind Orangeville dropping out of the postseason. We have got more Orangeville details coming up after our next break, but we do want to clear that up for you guys, that it makes sense. People are asking, people think that Orangeville just backed out or they folded. At the end of the day, they didn't participate in the postseason. The reason being, like we said, that county situation, handing them the 10 free points, trying to boost it so that Richmond Hill would finish by canceling. They canceled the end of the schedule. So if you look at it that way, canceling the end of the schedule to prevent these other teams from making ground and then handing the county a bunch of points, if you're starting to connect the dots here, there's something fishy, something going on, right? And that's the best way we could describe it. So, Brad, you got any thoughts to add to that?
Yeah, no, thank you. You got into it. And like I said, we talked about it. It's no slight to anyone in the Central. It's just the way everything played out. Just we wanted to talk about it. It didn't sit right with a lot of people. We know the fans wanted to talk about it. We know everyone wanted to talk about it, and we just weren't able to.
Yeah, and we're fed up with that, right? So we're going to cut to our last break here, and then we'll come right back. Brad and I are going to have an announcement outside of this break, and then we're going to get into our final segment here of the send-off, the finale, the
I,
last OSHL podcast.
I like to call it the Trey and Brad tell-all as a Bachelor fan. So.
I love it. The Trey and Brad tell all. You heard it here first, folks. Stick around. We'll be right back. All right, folks, welcome back into the finale of the OSHL podcast. And as I had teased before the break, Brad and I have a very important announcement that we're going to be making right now on our own behalfs. And the culmination of what we are going to talk about and what we have previously talked about has led to myself, Treh Hamilton, to come to this decision. It's been a very difficult decision. Obviously, you spend a lot of time in a situation, in a place around certain people, and you get comfortable. And but when things are in the way that we've put it, like we said, the censorship and what we're going to get into in the Central and all this stuff, it really all came to a head. And I felt that I didn't have an option. I felt that my opportunity here has reached its end. And that's why myself, Treh Hamilton, am announcing my official resignation from the Ontario Super Hockey League. I resign from my position as the OSHL podcast host. I also willingly forego my opportunity of being an OSHL executive in terms of my executive status with my membership card, being granted access to all things OSHL. For the 24-25 season. I hereby forego all of that opportunity as of today. And like I said, it's a tough situation, but this is my resignation from those positions and from those opportunities. I want to thank everybody that gave me those opportunities. And again, I want to thank my family and friends for being very supportive of me in this difficult time of really life-altering, career-altering decisions. And it's been an interesting ride over the last 3 years with this league, and obviously I wish many people nothing but the best, but overall this is the best decision for me in this situation, for me and my family, and for my future with hockey and just life in general. It's best that I step down, and as I said, I resigned from being the OSHL podcast host. I resigned from my affiliation with the OSHL, and as I said, my executive status. I have an executive member's card, which is proven status that I am an executive member of this league. For what I've done for it, I forego all the opportunity and as I said, all of the privileges that status has granted me. This is my resignation.
And I would like to follow up with that as well. I mean, I think with our first two segments, I think everyone could have seen this coming. I mean, it's kind of been our resignation letter as a podcast. Um, I I've poured my heart and my soul into this league for the past 3+ years. Um, sorry. Um, I'm at a loss for words. This isn't how I thought it was going to end, but this is my official resignation from the OSHL as well as your executive producer of the OSHL podcast, the social media director of the OSHL, and all my other affiliations. Um, Trey and I are moving on to what we think are bigger and better things. And yeah, you said it, Trey. I want to thank everyone who's supported myself, us as a team. And it's, like I said, not the way I thought it was going to end. This is not the way I thought we would be doing our last episode this season. But this isn't the last you're going to hear from myself or Trey. We'll get a bit more into that later. Not too much. We're going to tease a little bit, of course, but um, yeah, this is our official resignation.
Thanks, Brad. And I can feel the emotion for both of us. Like I said, it's not an easy opportunity here. It's not an easy situation, excuse me, not opportunity. It's not an easy situation for two guys that have put a lot into this league. I pumped a lot of tires, and I like to, as I said, think that the work that my dad and I did in Tilsonburg to bring the attention, the fan base, growing the fan base, bringing literally dozens and dozens of friends that were also passionate and getting people cheering and getting mascots and drums and all these things involved in this league. And you know, to leave in this situation with 2 games possibly remaining on the schedule is difficult. And first and foremost, before we switch over to our concluding thoughts here, our real tea, I want to congratulate, as this is the final episode, I want to congratulate whoever wins the WASHL Super League Cup final. That's a hard-fought series. Those two teams are battling away. And if you're a player on either of those two teams and you've even reached this point in the video, I'd say turn it off and come back after this is done, after the championship has been won. Don't let this distract you. That's not what this is all about. This is two guys who are in charge of this show that are letting the fans at home know that we're resigning. We're giving you guys the reasons for why we're resigning, and we're trying to paint a picture as to what goes on in certain situations behind closed doors that led to us feeling that we really had no choice. And so congratulations to whoever the WASHL Division champion is. Hard-fought season, hard-fought playoff. Strathroy, if it's you, the comeback from being the 7th seed and forcing your way up into the championship and eventually taking down potentially 3 of the top 4 seeds in the league, that would be a heck of a story. And for the Irish, all the crap you guys had to deal with this year in Stratford and the ownership changes and guys leaving and new guys coming in right at the deadline and all that stuff. If it is the Irish, congratulations. And, you know, I'm part of that organization. I don't know, obviously, with my resignation, how deeply affiliated I will be, but I can promise you that if the championship is won by the Irish, I will make sure that I have at least a couple of sips out of that cup. But that takes care of the congratulation. And now we got to focus on the biggest issue at hand for not only us, but the entire league. A major contributing factor as to why we're stepping down and why we've decided to forego a true final episode with all the guys on and congratulating the winners and calling a guest in and things like that. There are bigger issues at hand. And we're going to go back to last season. At the end of last year, there was a major storm brewing behind closed doors. There was a new league that was going to start, and it was going to threaten at the time, WASHL, in terms of teams that were interested in leaving, including the runner-up last year. They were on the doorstep. They were ready to leave, to the point where Brad and I were both told that if the Alveston Killer Bees would have won Game 7 last year, it was going to be kept fairly hush. And again, that comes from upper management here. That comes from the director of this league. They had a vision. Alveston along with a few other teams, and they were going to start something brand new and fresh. That was being started by the former owner of the Tilbury Bluebirds. He, again, was fed up with a lot of the stuff we're fed up with, but just a year prior. And he had this idea to start his own league, separate, not affiliated whatsoever with this league. And he was going to call it, and he even went and got the licensing and everything, the OSHL, which is very convenient as we sit here on the OSHL podcast. Many of you will notice the graphics and things have been removed from this episode, and this is the biggest reason why. So last year we were told there was a rebrand. We were told a lot of different things. We were going to, what was the slogan, Brad? Drop the W, I think is what they said.
Created a bunch of cool graphics for that.
Yeah, there was a lot of work we put into this, and again, this blindsided a lot of us. So the former owner of Tilbury had this vision. He submitted the paperwork, everything was done right in February of last year, to start the OSHL, his own league, his own new idea, right? And unaffiliated completely with this league. Fast forward a couple months later, and the director of our league goes and copyrights the same name or attempts to claim the same name under a separate address and take this and make it his own, including logos, branding, everything. And right now, at the moment, things are silent because of the postseason, but we're going to talk about it as the former owner of Tilbury and his team, not the Bluebirds, but his team, his group of people, are currently in a legal battle. A lawsuit has been put forward against the OSHL and its director and commissioner, and every team involved. So this is a huge issue. This is a legal issue, and when you look back at it, like I said, this was an idea created by an individual that was then stolen by our league and its upper management and run with. Now, our league already had issues and still is dealing with issues with the Eastern Ontario Super Hockey League, the EOSHL. There was talks of a merger, a buyout, whatever you want to call it. Those talks fell through. And as many of you at home noticed, the EOSHL and the OSHL logos look extremely similar, almost as if they were branded against each other, right, along with each other. I don't know if that was eventually. Obviously, I don't know if that was the vision at the beginning of the EOSHL. I know it was kind of the vision with the OSHL when it first started, but the EOSHL is its own complete identity. And they don't like that the OSHL has used its logo and name in terms of the Super Hockey League. So they have put forward a lawsuit. And we don't have progress on that one. We're not going to talk too much about that one, but you got to understand where the USHL is coming from. If you go back and look at the Eastern League, it was founded prior to the OSHL. The OSHL kind of stole the idea of what it's all about and wanted to turn that into a Western division, right? And eventually they'd come together. That was the plan. That fell through. And but the creation of the OSHL, the brand, the logos, all that stuff came behind the backs of the USHL guys. And that's why they have put forward a lawsuit. And then the convenient rebrand this year, the OSHL was, as I said, going to be started by the former owner of the Tilbury Bluebirds as its own identity and its own idea, its own brand. And our league jumped in, took that, and has run with it for the entire year. And now there is consequences. There are consequences. Although we've heard people in upper management here telling us that it's no big deal and just push it to the side. We've also heard from very reliable sources that this is a lot more serious than some people think. And at the end of the day, Brad and I are sitting here letting you guys know that we're resigning, we're stepping down. And a lot of people think that it's because of our affiliation with the Blitz or whatever it might be in your mind, but this is a big reason for it. I don't want to be affiliated with a brand that is currently facing legal ramifications for basically the theft of an idea, and through that idea, the theft of a logo and the branding and the, like I said, this started in somebody else's mind. That person went forward with it. It got shut down. This guy gets thrown out of our league. because of the rumors of him starting his own league. He goes to start that league. He secures the licensing for the OSHL, and then our league steps in a couple months later, takes the OSHL name, claims it's their own, and then has run with it all year. Behind all of our backs, by the way. So here we are sitting here, and Brad can attest to that. We've run the OSHL podcast all year with the logos and the branding and everything like that. And here we are in a lawsuit where it turns out that our league doesn't even properly own at least the OSHL brand and name. And to me, that's a big issue. And Brad, I don't know if you want to touch on that, but that is, to me, a huge deciding factor as to why I personally decided to step away. I don't want to be affiliated with this type of situation and the legal ramifications that may come about due to the theft and the use of this logo and brand and idea.
Yeah, I mean, I'm no lawyer. We all know that. But just the fact that you had kind of mentioned it, that we were told any of the pending lawsuits were no big deal. Um, Basically, I know we were all kind of left in the dark. We had no idea that any of this was going on behind the scenes. And here we are, promoting a podcast where, you're coming on every Monday and saying, welcome to the OSHL podcast. And meanwhile, all this stuff's going on in the background. I know everything's been kind of quiet lately, but just, from things we've heard that, things are going to start ramping up a bit more once the season's over. It was really disheartening. And it just, yeah, being left in the dark. I mean, we all heard the rumblings about the new league last year. Um, we knew which teams were involved, what was kind of happening, and then it kind of dissipated. We never really knew why, and just with new evidence that has been presented to us and hard evidence, it was hard to ignore.
You can't ignore it, especially when we tie what we do into that brand, right? Like we sit here and we talk about behind closed doors, within our conversations with one another, like the whole uncanny resemblance of the USHL and WashL logos and stuff. We talked about this a couple years ago, and here we sit now. We learn about the rebrand, the Drop the W campaign, the forced that the WashL was going to buy the EOSHL. All that was all rushed into our minds. It all fell apart, and then quickly turned the page, and now you can figure out why the Central came to be, right? So the lawsuit against the OSHL is completely separate from that which is against the WashL, which is now, of course, under the identity of the OSHL, but primarily against the WashL. And you can understand that league is in the East is upset. I mean, our league went and slapped 3 teams within the vicinity of their league, and admittedly, it has caused some distress in the Eastern League. And this isn't the Eastern League podcast, so I'm not going to sit here and talk all about them. But you got to understand that Deseronto, Tweed, some of these teams that are in those areas of the Trent Hills and the Madocs in the county, it's a high stress situation. They felt that they were being poached upon. And when you look at the strategic side of it, of putting teams up there, it really does make you question that was that the intention, right? Because the EO backed out of the deal with the WashL last year to merge as one and become what I guess now is the OSHL. But they had this idea, it backfired, and then August of this past year, we get news that there's 3, 4, 5 teams going right up in that area. And when you include Uxbridge as well, it becomes alarming, right? So you start to see there's a lot more backdoor things going on here that we at the time were unaware of, and that have made us fairly uncomfortable in our positioning, right? We are 2 guys that consider ourselves professionals and want to talk about hockey. We started off the show by explaining that we felt censored, and that was a red flag. And then we switched it over to explaining the Orangeville situation, the Central itself as a whole, what that created for us. And now you guys are kind of seeing it all come together here with the exposure of the lawsuit against the OSHL brand. And like I said, we got the hard evidence. It's on paper. It's undeniable. In February of 2024, the former owner of the Tilbury Bluebirds went and got the licensing secured for the OSHL brand. The league that we now represent, up until this point, goes and kicks him out of their league without a vote. There wasn't an ownership vote or anything. They just kicked him out. They kicked out, of course, the Woodstock Lakers as well, because they were in cahoots with one another, despite the fact that we all knew that Alvinston was also ready to go. Strange they didn't decide to kick them out. Again, these are all issues that we'll talk about as we get into it. But anyway, said owner gets kicked out right after this, and then 2 months later, our league says, we're going to drop the W and brands to the OSHL. And now we got a hot water situation. You got people that are angry. You got people that are asking questions. And you guys at home are wondering why we decide to make this decision. At the end of the day, this is a huge contributing factor, right? And
Uncomfortable is the appropriate word. I'm sure you can hear it in my voice. This whole situation is kind of uncomfortable, and it just, like I said, a lot of things came to light, and it's difficult, but that's why we wanted to do this and open up to you guys and give you guys what we know and our perspective on it all and why we're doing what we're doing.
Yeah. And it was, we feel for the former owner of Tilbury and his situation, right? He goes and has this vision because he was fed up with seeing the things that we were seeing, and I can understand. This is a free country. We have the freedom of speech and the freedom of expression, unless you're on this podcast up till this point. But anyway, he wanted to do something special and start his own league, and they shut it down quickly. I understand. It's a threatening league, right? It's an NHL team going to Hamilton. It's never going to happen because the Leafs won't let all those fans in that half of the GTA go cheer for a different team. I get it. But at the end of the day, the way it was handled, the stealing of the brand and kicking him and his, they didn't kick his team out, they kicked him out. And just the way it was almost like a bullying move to me. It was a flex of power. It was if anybody wants to go and do this behind our back, this is what's going to happen. And then to, like I said, go on and steal his brand, which he had already claimed, was a terrible thing. And the two of us learned of this. We've been talking about it, and it made us even question ourselves of calling ourselves the OSHL Podcast, using the logos, using the graphics on the streams. All those things began to make us question, are we going to be involved in this legally, right? And that's understandable to us. You gotta feel for where we're coming from, that we're expected to be the faces and the voices of this league. We're the people that are telling you guys what's going on. And that's the way it was intended to be, although it unfortunately didn't end up to be completely that. We still were the guys that got together, sat down, had conversations about the OSHL, and behind our backs, nobody told us. Everybody kept brushing it under the rug. And when I say everybody, I'm talking of upper management in this current OSHL, so our league director, our commissioner, etc. They kept brushing it under the rug. Don't worry about it. None of this is true. It's all rumors. It's all rumblings. And now we get to see over this last little while the hard evidence. And you got to understand that now we feel betrayed. We feel like our backs were stabbed. And why would we continue to support and be affiliated with a brand that at this point we don't know if we can trust? And that's why we decided to pull the plug and resign. And again, we're sorry that we didn't get that last episode and get to call one of the guys from the championship winning teams. But if you have a problem with that, take that up with the current management in this league, because at the end of the day, we did what we had to. We came, we showed up every week. We put on a show for you guys, fought through all of the censorship, fought through all of the other things that I'm not even going to get into in terms of our crew here and what we had to deal with. And we still kept fighting and doing it. And then as soon as we heard of this stuff, and then the central and the censorship and everything just kept piling on, many of you will notice in our last few episodes, we've had fewer numbers. And again, I'm not going to speak on anybody else's behalf. Those guys can come out and release their own statements if they please. But those numbers dwindling are not a coincidence. And that's all I'm going to say about that. And again, it comes back to a brand that we were proud to be part of. We figure out the situation of the stealing of the brand, the copying of the Eastern League logos, and then planting teams in their territory. And again, look at there's a new league starting in the central area, and we have confirmed that people involved with this league are involved with that league, and it's beginning. And so it makes you question, does this league even know deep down inside that the Central was a flop? It appears to be so, as there's a new senior league, branded senior, notice that, not semi-pro, starting in that exact vicinity. Some of these Central teams that were unsure if they have a home next year, well, it appears that this league's creation, I'm not going to say its name, you can go do the research on your own if you want to figure it out, but there's a new senior league in the central part of Ontario, and it's weird because, like we just talked about, supplanting the OSHL was never a good idea, but now we have a new league being created in that area, and it's being backed by the guys who run our league. So what we're trying to bring across here is that this we were lied to, and unfortunately for us, we were censored. We weren't able to have that freedom of expression and freedom of speech, and all these other things going on behind closed doors that they were trying to sneak around us. We feel betrayed, and that ultimately is the reason why we have decided to follow through with resigning and ending the podcast tonight.
I don't want to do it because of editing, but I need a censorship counter on Trey for this episode. Yeah, it's just, I think the other thing too is we kind of see the writing on the wall with everything that's happened, everything we've talked about over these past three segments. I think our resignation is because we see what has happened, what we've dealt with, especially this past year. And like I said, we kind of see the writing on the wall, what's going to happen. And um, it's going to be interesting to see how everything plays out. But everything we've seen, it all contributes to our decision.
For sure. I mean, my last thought on the Central, again, please, people who support Madoc, Trent Hills, and the county, please understand that I'm not talking bad on you guys. I'm really, at the end of the day, addressing my issues with the league as a whole and its upper management and their decision to hastily force this upon us. August 1st of this year, that's pretty close to the regular season. The COSHL still wasn't even announced. We're talking 2 weeks. So this is August 1st normally is when scheduling, training camps, preseason games, all those things are starting to get figured out. Ice gets starting to be put back in. Minor hockey starts getting ready to go. At that point, we still didn't know. And then 2 weeks after August 1st, Orangeville gets the call, as Orangeville and Richmond Hill were promised buys into the OSHL division. Both owners knew each other well. It was going to be a nice geographical. You got Elora, you got Orangeville, you come up, you got Richmond Hill. It was going to work out well. And then Orangeville gets the call. And as I said, everybody's, there's people in management and upper management of this league who say that Orangeville is, like I said, the Joker to everyone's Batman. And that's not the case. They got asked at the last minute to follow along with this pitch of what the COSHL was going to be. And then now we're here all these months later, and their owner and their team is getting painted as the bad guys when that whole situation got thrown upon them. They agreed on it, then convinced Richmond Hill to agree on it because Richmond Hill had plans to go elsewhere if things didn't work out here. It was set in stone. They were ready to go. And the owner in Orangeville was able to convince Richmond Hill to stick around. Where would we be without those guys, right? I mean, that's your division champions up there. So that whole situation, I believe, was terribly managed. I feel that it was rushed, and I feel that creating a separate entity would have been the better opportunity, and it wouldn't have led to as much frustration for those of us who were still involved up until this point. So,
Trey, you look at the jersey behind you. You can't see it on my Blitz jerseys, but it's got the Washoe logo on it, right? They were supposed to be in that division, and like you said, August. I mean, jerseys are ready. Guys are getting on the ice, and then they get put in the Central, and it's just funny seeing that Blitz jersey behind you there with the Washoe logo on it.
yeah, they wore it all year because that was their understanding, right? That's the message we're trying to show you guys, is that there was a lot of last minute, a lot of rushing when it comes to the Central. And now we got the Eastern League, the supplanting of the Eastern League at the last minute, or at least the attempt to, at least to stir some feathers, get some more birdies in the trees chirping, right? That's what it's all about. And then you get into the lawsuit with the OSHL branding and stuff, and it just all has culminated into this frustration for us, which started out as censorship issues, where we should have been allowed to sit down and talk about what we wanted to talk about. We weren't going to call out players. We weren't going to call out owners. We were just going to talk about hockey. And then as soon as things started to get into that gray area, and as soon as we got told what we could and couldn't talk about, that's when this started to build up. And then we learn about the lawsuits. We learn about how Bush League, the ending of the Central was. And guess what? It's culminated at this. And this is why there's just two of us sitting here tonight having a conversation with you guys at home. And even as we get into kind of our final moments here of what is going to be the OSHL podcast, I wanted to talk about this year and the playoff run that I've been part of in Stratford and a lot of the stuff that's gone on there. And that's going to be kind of my closing thought on this. The Fighting Irish were kind enough to invite me up there while their former owner was still in management. They knew my situation in Tillsonburg. It was unfortunate. They felt that I was wronged by the people in Tillsonburg, specifically their owner. And so the owner in Stratford, former owner, called me up and asked me to come up and just get a feel for things. And when all that stuff went down in Elora and Stratford was, I want people to realize that Stratford was on the brink of extinction, of folding, of not existing. And this is a team that is a flagship member of this league. This is in the middle of all this stuff going on. You got the Uxbridge situation, you got Orangeville beating team 17-0. You got people yelling and screaming about the Bees and their points and the Jets and their points and all this stuff. In the middle of all this massively controversial year, one of the flagship teams, a champion in this league, about to fold. And the owner in Orangeville steps in, takes over the team, takes over the responsibility. A bunch of guys leave because, hey, the old owner was their guy. He steps in and he does a heck of a job bringing in free agents, bringing in the new equipment for the streams, bringing in all of these things that were followed up from the original owner's vision. He went and made it even better. The social media engagement, the videos, the showing people what really goes on behind the scenes in that room, and the love for people like Mikey in Stratford and how special and important that organization means to that city. That team would not even exist right now if it wasn't for him and what he did. And he brought me in as the play-by-play guy. I stepped in, and I've had a great end of the season and playoffs with my color commentator Brian Hawley. It's been a great time, and we got to watch some really fun moments, and including that first round win over Petrolia. I thought that was a great series. The second round with Tilbury, again, a great series. Getting to watch guys like Jake Durham and Dylan Denemy flying up and down that ice against guys like Zach Magwood. It was so special. And then we got here into the championship, and the Irish are playing the Jets, and here we are. It's been a build-up. It's been interesting, but there have been a lot of things that have occurred on the ice that have made a lot of people ask some questions, and myself included. I'm one of them, including our last game, which may be the last game I call in this league, Game 5 in Stratford. There's a few situations that were egregious on parts of the officiating, and I refuse to turn a blind eye. I feel I didn't step above and beyond of what I was allowed to say, but the director of this league decided to fine the Stratford Fighting Irish, citing the reason being, as among many fines, citing the reason being that they had an overly biased stream, which is in and of itself ridiculous because we are employed by the team, not by the league, in terms of streaming. And the second reason was that we criticized officiating. So you can understand the culmination of the censorship when it comes down to the fact that my team that I work for is being fined because I and my color commentator criticized a few calls that were blatant and I felt were unfair. And there have been a lot of questions around the Irish and the situation in this postseason, not only in terms of officiating, but in terms of all the eyes on them. And a lot of those questions have arisen because of a situation which came up in which my character was questioned and my integrity was questioned. And There was a conversation that was had a while back in early April of this month. And again, this is the hardest part of the show for me, but I got to do what I got to do. And early April so early this month, I had a conversation with the director of our league, and just a friendly conversation chatting about the upcoming championship series. And I was saying how excited I was, and he was giving me reasons for his excitement, et cetera, et cetera. And as the conversation had winded down, the director of our league made a comment saying that he doesn't want a Marco team to win. And that started a lot of controversy. I had a few wobbly pops up at the Kraft Hockeyville game with Brad, and people started to hear about what was said. And all I got to say is that, in that situation, if you're in that position, how do you think we're going to approach that after a comment like that has been made, and you see what has gone on the ice, and you realize that the person who ultimately owns and runs this league said something to that extent, even if they claim they were joking or not, you can understand why the frustration is where it is for the Irish. And whether Stratford wins or not, that's not up to me. And obviously, I hope that they have two well-officiated games in Game 6 and Game 7, and I hope that the best team wins. That's all that I care about. But when we're hearing that, we're creating assumptions of bias and criticizing officiating, when a comment like that was made, and Marco, again, being the owner of the Irish, when that comment was made, it blew me away, because all of these other things had already built up and pissed me off, built up and pissed Brad off and other people off. And then it comes to the forefront in a comment like that. And when we go out and we see the Jets getting 9 power plays and the Irish getting 1 and things like that, and then we say why, this comment is where a lot of that was based off of, because all these things that we've already talked about tonight in terms of the Central, the Blitz, the Irish, it all comes back to, like we said, there's a common dislike for the ownership in Orangeville and Stratford. And when comments like that are made, it's very hard to deny reality. And that's why I ultimately have made this decision. And I feel that at the end of the day, I'm justified in my backing away. And when a comment like that is made, I don't want to see a Marco team win, or I don't want to see Marco win in general. When that comment is made, and you're the guy who runs the show, it's frustrating when we then turn around and see what's happened in this postseason. And you can understand why people are frustrated, and hopefully people can understand Brad and I and our decision tonight and what this all came to. And again, Brad, thank you so much for doing this, man.
No, thank you, Trey. This is one of the hardest things I think I've ever had to do, but it's
Yeah.
also probably the most important that we've had to do.
Well, we have much on the horizon for us. Again, this is it for the OSHL podcast as a whole. Thank you so much for watching, but we're going to switch it over to our social medias, our private social medias. We're going to tag, Brad's going to post up on the screen our personal pages. If you're curious about where we're going and these new opportunities we're talking about, that's where you're going to find them. Go to our pages, check it out, stay updated, follow us. We'll let you guys know.
We're not going anywhere. So this isn't the last of you've heard of us. This is the last you will hear of us on this platform, this specific podcast. But stay tuned, because we're not going anywhere.
There's some big things coming, and we're really excited. And again, the opportunity that we've been presented elsewhere, it's when you look at everything that's gone on with the lawsuits and everything, and all the integrity questions that we've had about this league in this situation, it really, the opportunity we've been presented elsewhere, it's undeniable that it's for the betterment of both of us as professionals and as we said, play-by-play guys, podcast hosts, whatever you want to say. We're not going to tease too much about what we're getting into, but what we're getting into is going to be very exciting, and I just can't wait for the future, Brad. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, and I want to take the time to say thank you to all of our fans who have tuned in for the past 25 episodes if we count this one. You guys don't know how much this has meant to, I can speak for Trey, both of us, and we really hope you follow us on the journey that is us advancing our careers and bringing something really new and exciting to you guys.
Thanks again. And for the last time, on behalf of Mr. Brad Thompson, I'm Treh Hamilton. Thanks again to our members, Mr. Joel Campbell, Mr. Brian Hawley, Mr. Bill Newman, Mr. Brad Burton, Mr. Andrew Rogers, and Mr. Patrick O'Neill. Thank you so much. This has been the final OSHL podcast.
This is